Hey everyone. So, I wanted to take an opportunity to dig a little bit deeper into the subject of composition because I think there's some confusion that I need to clear up. So, in order to do that, we're going to look at it in a few different contexts or in a few different scenarios. Let's think about composition from a sports perspective. So, for example, if you were to think about the game of football, now, even if you don't like it, I want you to think about this for a second. There are a ton of people who are on the field at the same time, and they all need to move in certain ways, particularly if they're on offense, to protect the plan of what's supposed to happen during the play. So, who comes up with that plan? Well, it's a composer. If you're on offense, it would be an offensive coordinator, and on defense, it would be a defensive coordinator. So it does really matter where people go, and that's why there are folks whose jobs that it is to design a play. First, this person moves this way, and then the quarterback is going to have space to do this and take that space, and so is going to do this. It's really complex. So composition is definitely a part of that. Let's look at another sport. The sport of basketball, pretty different from football. It moves much faster, right? So on a surface level, you might think, well, people are just moving all over the court. There's not really composition to that. But, oh, yes, there definitely is. The coach is designing and practicing with the team members to learn how to move around the court to create spaces and how to throw opponents off balance and do all sorts of things. So composition definitely is happening off the court here. Okay, sometimes it's happening right on the side of the court. If you've ever watched a basketball game and you see the clipboard and a coach or somebody drawing what needs to happen, composition definitely at play, and I'm not sad about my pun. Okay, think about a gymnastics routine, specifically a beam routine. It's not like if you are getting ready to compete or show, you just get on the beam and do whatever you feel like it. No, there's absolutely a plan, right? Correct me if I'm wrong. I've never done gymnastics myself, but I imagine that you have to have a sequence of motions or demonstrations of skill, and the way you tie them together is going to have a pretty big impact on the score that you get. Okay, so as you move through a routine, maybe it's your coach or maybe you and your coach come up with the moves that you're going to do together, and you have a start, middle, and a finish to your composition of your gymnastics routine. Some of you have mentioned that you like horses or are around horses a lot. And so I don't know if you've ever done a horse show, but certainly when you're putting together a routine for a horse show, you can't just let the horse into the ring and then you just randomly demonstrate whatever skill you feel like it. No, there's usually an order and a pathway that you would need to follow. First this jump and then this jump, and if you do them out of order, you might lose points over something like that. So I hope using those few sports kind of helps paint part of the picture of composition a little bit more. I wanted to take a couple of musical examples to show you the difference between performing something and being the composer of something. So I'm going to take a really famous piece of music. It is here. Let's see. It's the Toccata in D minor by Johann Sebastian Bach. And if you don't know it, I suspect that somewhere along the line you've probably heard it because it's really famous, and it is particularly used around this time of year, October, because it's kind of Halloween-y. So just listen to this. Again, the composer, Johann Sebastian Bach. that's just a tiny little piece of it. It goes on and on. It's really, I think I would use the word epic, and yeah, I hope you recognize that. So, I just performed that piece, little snippet from the piece, the Toccata in D minor by Johann Sebastian Bach. By the way, do you remember what minor means? I want to talk about that. Now I want to play something really different. Okay, so the composer of this piece is Miss Smith, and it's called The Living Dead. This is a song that I wrote for Halloween many moons ago, but I thought I would share it with you now because it's October and it's a good time. Let's see if I can remember how it goes. All right, ready? Here we go. The living dead twist their hands and dream about their senses, an act of magic gone bad. What do you think about this mess? So that was just a little snippet of that song. It's about the zombie apocalypse. Stop and think for a moment. Who performed both of the pieces of music that you heard? It was me, right? Miss Smith, I think. There's nobody else in here. It wasn't Vincent Kitty. Okay. But who wrote those two pieces of music that you heard? The first one was written by our friend Johann Sebastian Bach. The second one was written by me. So while I was the performer of both of those pieces of music, I only composed the second one. Does that make sense? So the last thing that I'm going to do is to share with you something that I'm actually kind of proud of. Somebody wrote in and said, when I asked, well, what's an example of a time you composed something? By the way, thank you if you wrote in and gave a response on the discussion board. So this person's response was, when I was hearing the sound of horse hoofs, I felt like I was composing. Okay, and I love that. I love that so much because the sound of a horse moving through space is incredible. It's very rhythmic. So here's an example of that. Just a horse. Oops, yeah, I think we're at the beginning. So maybe you can kind of hear a little bit of rhythm in the horse's movements, the sound of the hoofs on the ground. But just hearing it alone, well, who created those sounds? Was it you or was it the horse? Did you plan for the horse to take those exact steps and have the exact sound that it had? Or did that flow naturally from the horse? So that probably isn't going to be an example of composition, but it is a really cool example of how you could take a sound from nature or anywhere else and turn it into something musical. So I thought I'd play an example of how you could do something like that. You'll start off by hearing just the same horse sound that you heard at the beginning, and then it goes somewhere a little bit different. So that could be an example of how you might use a sound from a horse or a few sounds from horses to make a composition. There's a plan, okay? All right, so as we're leaving this topic, here's what I want to sum up for you guys. When you're describing the characteristics of a piece of music or a song, that doesn't necessarily tell you about its composition or the way it's built, the way it's put together. If you want to kind of map out the composition of a piece of music, you really have to listen. You have to dig deep into hearing it, feeling it, and sensing either the changes in mood or the changes in the patterns that you're noticing. And lastly, if you're somebody who composes or a composer, it means that you're intentionally meaning you want that thing to happen for a specific reason. It means you're intentionally creating something. You're hearing or imagining an interesting sound, and that's just the first step in deciding how you want to use it in a composition. I hope this helps, and I hope you're doing great, guys.